Well, welcome back to another Story Tim, where I tell you some of my favorite stories from my 50 years on the planet here. And this section of videos tells about stories that I've dealt with when I was shooting news for WTOC, the CBS affiliate in Savannah, Georgia. One of the reasons why I was able to win as many Associated Press awards as I did was, well, for one, because I was at the right place at the right time. Of course, we had the Desert Storm stuff happen. Another one of the really big stories that went up was the Hugo, the big hurricane that came through and smashed into Charleston, South Carolina. Of course, Savannah is a coastal city, so, you know, during hurricane season, hurricanes are big news. Well, we were looking at as Hugo coming in, you know, looked like it was just going to completely demolish Savannah. Savannah, I don't know if you've ever visited Savannah or not. If you haven't, you should. Savannah has the largest historic district in America, planned out by Oglethorpe, who just, it's beautiful. The azaleas, the hanging moss, the trees, the beautiful old buildings, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, all that good stuff. Glory was filmed there. I mean, Savannah is just an extraordinary place. It really, truly is one of my favorite American cities and one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I've been all over. But when we were afraid that Hugo was going to erase all of that, you know, these, you know, hundreds of miles an hour wind coming in there, you know, to destroy it all. So they had a lot of, you know, it was coming down the coast, and we had Andy Rooney down there, and the guys from CBS News from New York had come down there to come and shoot stuff. And then it looked like when the storm was going to go north of us towards Charleston, they took their stuff and went there. So you know, we were shooting the storm there. It was incredible. Literally, the wind was so strong, even in Savannah, where it would start to blow cars over. It was incredible. We would do live shots outside with horizontal rain. You know, where you would go out there and shoot, and the reporter would be leaning, you know, into this thing as it would be blowing them over. It was really incredible. Well, fortunately, it did miss Savannah. Unfortunately, it clobbered Charleston. So a couple days, you know, after that, I went up to go and shoot with one of my reporter friends, Avis Blackman, to go and cover the aftermath of Hugo, what had happened in Hugo. One of the unusual things of the stories of this is that actually more people were hurt in the aftermath of Hugo by chainsaw accidents than were from the actual storm. You know, people didn't really know what they were doing with chainsaws, and they'd start cutting and they'd bounce up and hit them in the head or chop off an arm or something. But I always found that to be ironic. So we moved on up, you know, up the road from Savannah, across the river into South Carolina, started going up the coast towards Charleston. One of the things that I couldn't believe, you know, in that part of South Carolina and in a lot of Georgia's pine forest. Now, pine trees aren't particularly strong trees. And it looked like a giant had just come in there and just with his massive hand had just pushed all of those pine trees down. It was just like every one of them was just crash, 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 crash. A whole just, you know, fields and fields of these trees that were just like snapped off about maybe a quarter of the way up, just broke off. You know, it was incredible. And we went in there into Charleston, and you would see boats that had been blown up out of the water that were like, you know, 40 or 50 feet up on land. And you would see buildings where all the windows were just shattered. It just looked like a bomb had gone off in there. But the amazing thing to me about all of that stuff was how quickly it would be rebuilt. It gave me a lot of hope about man's, you know, spirit of brotherhood, how people would help each other in these very difficult situations to get it back on track. I know we got stories like that out of New Orleans all the time. But although it was a lot of destruction, physical destruction, it always seems to me that as long as it's just a physical thing, that it can always be repaired. And a lot of times it turns out to look better than before. You know, but it's the loss of life that's the real poignant part of all this stuff. And it helps, you know, over my years of having seen so much death and destruction and shooting news and being raised in Africa, of keeping a perspective on things that, you know, It may be bad. I mean, 2008 was one of the hardest years of my life. We had a house fire. We had to move out of our house for 5 months. We had some very serious issues with, with Jesse, my son, having to be hospitalized and everything. It was a very difficult situation. But, one thing that one of my friends told me as I was being carried away in the ambulance when I was hurt was, where there's life, there's hope. And even though you would see Charleston just get smashed by this massive hurricane, where there's life, there's hope. So try to keep things in perspective, even when it seems like the storms of life are blowing you over. Man, where there's life, there's hope. It's going to get better. And that's another Story Time.